10 medicinal plants you have at home that really heal. Hello, herbalists. What if the most powerful medicine you can use is already in your kitchen? Not in a pharmacy, not in a laboratory. In your kitchen, in your garden, in any supermarket on the planet for just a few euros. The plants that humans have used to heal themselves for thousands of years haven't disappeared. They aren't rare or hard to find. They're exactly where they've always been, right in front of us. We're overlooking them as we drive to the pharmacy for something more expensive with more side effects. Today I'll tell you about 10 of them, plants that have been silently healing for thousands of years. Stay until the third floor. It has over 300 clinical trials behind it and shortens the duration of the flu in randomized controlled trials. And the first floor is something you probably have in your kitchen right now that kills more types of bacteria than anyone has told you. Like this post if you already use any of these plants at home. Subscribe. We post every week. There's something I think is important to say before we begin. These 10 plants are not alternatives to medicine. They are medicine, the original medicine, the one that worked for thousands of years before pharmaceutical laboratories existed. And in many cases, modern clinical studies confirm exactly what herbalists knew 2,000 years ago. Echinacea was the most prescribed medicine in America in the 19th century. Elderberry was a staple in every European pantry before antiviral drugs. Ginger appears in Chinese medical texts from 5,000 years ago. These plants weren't forgotten because they stopped working. They were forgotten because no one can patent a plant that grows in the wild. That's exactly what we're going to correct today. 3 things to keep you going. First, one of these plants you have right now in your spice rack was found to be as effective as paracetamol for tension headaches in comparative clinical trials. This isn't just a herbalist's claim. It's a result published in a peer-reviewed medical journal. Second, elderberry, that plant your grandmother had in her garden and which antivirals replaced, shortened the duration of the flu by 4 days in randomized controlled trials. 4 days. Tamiflu achieves 2. And third, the number 1 plant on this list, the one we all have in our kitchens without giving it a second thought, has documented activity against antibiotic-resistant bacterial strains, including MRSA. When science starts looking to plants to combat antibiotic resistance, something important is happening. Let's begin. Plants 10-6, the ones you already know but not as medicine. Plant number 10, lavender. Anxiety and sleep, the purple fields that everyone knows as perfume, and which turn out to be an anxiety medication approved in Europe. Lavender is one of the most recognizable plants on the planet. Those purple stems, that unmistakable fragrance, those fields in the south of France that fill travel magazines every summer. Most people associate it with perfumes and candles. What most don't know is that a standardized lavender oil preparation is approved as a treatment for anxiety in several European countries, supported by randomized clinical trials that show anxiety reductions comparable to pharmaceutical medications, but without dependence or withdrawal symptoms. Lavender aromatherapy also has documented effects. It reduces cortisol levels and improves sleep quality in measurable physiological markers, not just subjective assessments. Why it works? Linalool and linylyl acetate modulate GABA receptors in the brain. The oral preparation Silexin showed comparable efficacy to lorazepam without dependence in clinical trials. The aroma reduces cortisol in measurable physiological markers. How to use it? Infusion of dried flowers before bed. Essential oil in a diffuser in the bedroom. Standardized oral extract for more precise effects on anxiety. Sachets of dried flowers under the pillow. Those purple fields weren't decoration. They were the pharmacy. And they still are. Floor number 9, Romero. Memory and brain protection, the herb from the spice rack that the Greeks used for studying. That Shakespeare mentioned in relation to memory. And that neuroscience has just explained why they were right. Rosemary is in almost everyone's spice rack. That Mediterranean herb with needle-like leaves and an intense resinous fragrance goes well with roasted potatoes and lamb. No one thinks of it as medicine, but Greek students wore rosemary wreaths when they needed to memorize. Shakespeare wrote rosemary from memory in Hamlet. For centuries, that connection between rosemary and mental clarity was treated as poetic symbolism. It turns out it was observation. Studies show that being in a room with the scent of diffused rosemary produces measurable improvements in speed and accuracy on cognitive tasks. The compound 1.8 cineol in rosemary essential oil crosses the blood-brain barrier and inhibits the enzyme that breaks down acetylcholine, the key neurotransmitter in memory and learning. Why it works? 1.8 cineol inhibits acetylcholinesterase, increasing brain acetylcholine. Rhamorhinic acid has a documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effect on nerve cells. Real pharmacological mechanism, not placebo. How to use it? Infusion of fresh or dried leaves. Fresh rosemary added to everyday cooking. Essential oil in a diffuser for mental clarity. Fresh sprigs in a glass of water on your desk have a documented effect from the aroma alone. The Greeks didn't know about acetylcholine, but they knew exactly what rosemary did. Neuroscience has just given it a name. Plant number 8, chamomile. Anxiety, sleep, and the gut. Grandma's herbal infusion that everyone takes for granted, with brain pharmacology that surprises those who discover it. Chamomile is so familiar, so associated with comfort, that most people assume it's almost a placebo, a pleasant infusion that can't possibly be real medicine. That assumption is wrong. Chamomile contains a compound called apigenin that binds to benzodiazepine receptors in the brain, the same receptors to which Valium binds. The neurological mechanism is real and documented. Clinical trials confirm it. Chamomile produces significant reductions in the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder compared to a placebo. Another study documented that continued use reduced the relapse rate of anxiety. Regarding sleep, studies show improvements in sleep quality, especially in older adults and postpartum women, two groups for whom pharmaceutical sleep aids carry significant risks. Why it works? Apigenin binds to benzodiazepine receptors, exerting a mild anxiolytic effect without dependence. It has well-documented anti-inflammatory properties for digestive and cutaneous use. Sleep improvement has been observed in trials with elderly populations. How to use it? Infusion of dried flowers, 1 to 2 cups a day. Before bed for insomnia. On an empty stomach for digestive problems. Applied topically in compresses for irritated skin or eczema. 2,000 years of herbalists reaching for those white flowers weren't wrong. They were working with a real pharmacological tool. It still works the same way. Planta número 7, peppermint. Headache, indigestion, and congestion. It's in toothpaste and sweets, and also in gastroenterology guidelines as a first-line treatment. Peppermint is the most striking case on this list. The gap between how casually people treat it and how seriously clinical research takes it is almost comical. It's in toothpaste, candy, and the bowl at the restaurant reception. And yet, it's the subject of solid clinical research for pain, digestive disorders, and respiratory congestion. For tension headaches. Several clinical trials show that peppermint oil applied to the forehead and temples provides pain relief equivalent to paracetamol. For irritable bowel syndrome, enteric-coated peppermint oil capsules appear in gastroenterology guidelines as a first-line treatment, supported by multiple meta-analyses. For nasal congestion, menthol is a clinically validated decongestant. Why it works? Menthol activates cold receptors, inhibiting pain perception. It relaxes intestinal smooth muscle, reducing irritable bowel spasms. A decongestant validated by its ability to open airways. 3 distinct mechanisms in one plant. How to use it? Diluted essential oil applied to temples for headaches. infusion for digestion and congestion, enteric-coated capsules for irritable bowel syndrome, inhaled steam from hot infusion for congestion. Most drugs target only one pathway. Mint targets 3 simultaneously, and it's been in your garden your whole life. Plant number 6, elderberry. FLU and respiratory infections. For fewer days of flu in clinical trials. Tamiflu achieves 2, and elderberry doesn't require a prescription. Before antiviral drugs, elderberry syrup was a winter staple in every European pantry. The dark berries of the sambucus tree were used throughout Europe as a first-line remedy for colds and flu long before written records existed. Hippocrates called elderberry his complete medicine cabinet. Then came synthetic pharmaceuticals, and elderberry was relegated to the realm of ancient medicine. Subsequent clinical studies painstakingly rebuilt its reputation. Several randomized controlled trials confirm that elderberry extract reduces both the duration and severity of the flu. One widely cited study documented that flu patients taking elderberry extract recovered 4 days earlier than the placebo group. A later meta-analysis combining several studies confirmed significant reductions in both the duration and severity of symptoms. Why it works? Anthocyanins interfere with a virus's ability to replicate and simultaneously activate the immune system. This dual antiviral and immunostimulatory action explains the potency of the effect. Raw berries are toxic. Always cook them. How to use it? Homemade syrup. Boil dried berries with water, raw honey, ginger, and cinnamon, strain and bottle. 1 tablespoon daily in winter as a preventative measure. Several tablespoons a day at the first sign of flu. Also available as a standardized extract. Note: raw elderberries are toxic. Always consume them cooked or as a processed extract. Elderflowers are safe when used as a direct infusion. The syrup your grandmother kept in the pantry wasn't superstitious. It was antiviral, and it's more effective in terms of recovery time than what came to replace it. Herbalists, we've covered 5 plants that most of you probably have at home right now without giving them the credit they deserve. Now come the 5 that are most surprising, the ones with the most solid clinical studies. And the number 1 plant, the one that closes the list, has a story that's been unfolding for 5,000 years and isn't over yet. Plants 521, the 5 that surprise the most. Plant number 5, aloe vera. Burns, wounds, and digestion, the windowsill plant that outperforms standard pharmaceutical burn dressings in clinical trials. Aloe vera sits on windowsills and countertops in millions of homes. It's that thick, spiny succulent everyone seems to have lying around, often forgetting to water it for months. Most people treat it as mere decoration, but break off a leaf and apply the fresh gel to a burn, and you're using one of the most clinically validated topical medications available. Egyptian medical records from 2200 BC describe it as the plant of immortality. Greek physicians used it for wounds and digestive issues. And when modern clinical trials came along, they found that aloe gel healed first and second-degree burns measurably faster than standard pharmaceutical dressings, including petroleum-based ones. A systematic review of the literature concluded exactly that. Why it works? Asamanin polysaccharides accelerate tissue repair and reduce inflammation. Glycoproteins stimulate fibroblast proliferation. Antimicrobial properties protect the wound from infection. More than 75 active compounds identified. How to use it? Fresh leaf gel for burns, minor wounds, and irritated skin. Apply several times a day. Drink the juice internally for digestive support. Fresh leaf is always more effective than processed commercial gels, which are usually highly diluted. Note: the clear gel inside is safe. The yellow latex just under the skin is a powerful laxative. Do not use internally without medical supervision. 6,000 years of healing wounds. Modern clinical studies have only confirmed what ancient Egypt already knew. Plant number 4, kuruma. Chronic inflammation pharmaceutical companies have been trying for decades to synthesize what curcumin does. They still haven't succeeded. Turmeric is the orange-yellow root that gives curry its color, a cornerstone of Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine for thousands of years. It is currently one of the most studied vegetables in medical research, with thousands of published studies. Curcumin, its active compound, has demonstrated such significant anti-inflammatory effects that pharmaceutical companies have been trying for years to develop synthetic versions. The reason is simple. Chronic inflammation is the underlying driver of almost all major diseases of our time: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, cancer, and arthritis. Clinical trials show improvements in arthritis symptoms comparable to pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories, protective effects on brain health, and measurable improvements in cardiovascular markers. Why it works? Curcumin inhibits multiple molecular pathways of inflammation simultaneously, something single-molecule anti-inflammatories cannot replicate. It has documented effects on NF-kappa B, COX-2, and other key inflammatory pathways. How to use it? Always with black pepper. Piperine increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. Or with fat, since it is fat-soluble. Golden milk as an evening habit. Ayurvedic medicine already did it this way without knowing about chemistry. Sometimes traditional knowledge is thousands of years ahead of scientific explanation. Turmeric is the perfect example. Plant number 3, echinacea. Immune system and respiratory infections, 300 clinical trials. Millennia-old indigenous use. And a story of how the pharmaceutical industry sidelined it without it ceasing to work. Here it is, the one I promised at the beginning, echinacea, that flower with purple petals and a conical center that grows in meadows, ditches, and gardens all over the world. The Plains peoples of North America used it as their primary medicine. It was central to their herbal medicine for infections, wounds, fevers, and immune stress. When European settlers and herbalists discovered it, it became one of the most prescribed drugs in America in the 19th century. Then came the pharmaceutical age. Echinacea was dismissed as unscientific folk medicine and spent almost the entire 20th century ignored as medicine, bet everything on synthetic antibiotics. The studies that followed rebuilt its reputation one by one. Meta-analyses that pool results from multiple randomized trials confirm that echinacea reduces both the likelihood of developing upper respiratory infections and their duration and severity when they do occur. Why it works? Alkylamides and polysaccharides interact directly with immune cells, accelerating and enhancing the immune response. A quality preparation produces a characteristic tingling sensation on the tongue. If you don't feel it, the product is degraded. How to use it? Take at the first sign of illness, the first tickle in the throat, the first heaviness that precedes a cold. Taken early and consistently during illness, it shortens recovery time. Tinctures preserve the active alkylamides particularly well. Note: not recommended for autoimmune diseases without medical supervision. It is more effective when used cyclically than continuously. 300 studies, thousands of years of indigenous use, and it continues to grow in gardens all over the world, doing exactly what it always did. Plant number 2, ginger. Nausea, inflammation, and pain. 5,000 years in traditional medicines worldwide, and clinical trials that equate it to antiemetic drugs. Ginger has been used medicinally for over 5,000 years. It appears in the oldest Chinese medical texts, in Ayurvedic medicine, in Greek writings, and in medieval European herbalism. It is one of the most consistently used medicinal plants in human history, appearing in more separate cultures than almost any other plant on this list. And modern pharmacology has fully validated this. Gingerols and shogales, its active compounds, have documented antiemetic, anti-inflammatory, and analgesic effects. For nausea, The studies are particularly compelling. Multiple randomized trials confirm that ginger is as effective as antiemetic drugs for chemotherapy-induced, postoperative, and pregnancy-related nausea. In some studies, it even outperforms the drug with fewer side effects. Why it works? Gingerols and showgales have documented antiemetic, anti-inflammatory, and analgesic mechanisms. The anti-inflammatory compounds act on the same pathways as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs. It accelerates gastric emptying, improving digestion. How to use it? Infuse freshly grated ginger in hot water for 10 minutes. Available in supermarkets worldwide. Grate a little over food daily for a cumulative anti-inflammatory effect. Use in crystallized form or in capsules for travel sickness. 5,000 years, all the world's medical traditions, and modern science arrives at the same conclusions one by one. Plant number 1, garlic. Antimicrobial, cardiovascular, and immune. The most studied medicinal plant on Earth. It's in your kitchen right now, and it has documented activity against antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And here we are, garlic, the white, fragrant bulb in your kitchen bowl, the most widely used culinary ingredient on the planet, and also one of the most extensively studied medicinal plants in human history. What the studies show is staggering. Hippocrates prescribed it for a wide variety of conditions. Egyptian medical texts document its use. Greek athletes ate it before competing. Roman soldiers consumed it for strength and resistance to infection. Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine have used it for thousands of years. All the great ancient medical traditions, with no connection to one another, independently arrived at garlic as a primary medicine. The compound responsible for most of its effects is alliin, produced when a garlic clove is crushed or cut, and an enzymatic reaction is activated. Alliin and its derivatives have documented antimicrobial activity against a remarkable spectrum of pathogens, including bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Studies show activity against antibiotic-resistant strains, including MRSA. For cardiovascular health, meta-analyses confirm significant reductions in blood pressure in people with hypertension, reduction of LDL cholesterol, and improvements in arterial stiffness. Why it works? Allicin and its derivatives have broad-spectrum antimicrobial activity, including against antibiotic-resistant strains. Meta-analyses confirm reductions in blood pressure, LDL cholesterol, and arterial stiffness. A randomized trial documented significantly fewer colds in the group consuming garlic daily. Consistent observational anti-cancer activity has been observed across multiple populations. How to use it? Crushed raw garlic for maximum alliin. Let it sit for 10 minutes after crushing before cooking to stabilize the active compounds. Aged garlic extract in supplements for the most studied cardiovascular benefits. 1 or 2 cloves a day in cooking as a habit. 5,000 years, every continent, every medical tradition, and a body of research that most drugs can't match. In your kitchen, right now. 10 plants, and all with the same message. The most powerful medicines aren't always the most expensive or the most complicated. Sometimes they're in the bowl on the counter, in the spice rack on the windowsill, in the garden just a couple of meters away from where you're sitting right now. They weren't forgotten because they stopped working. They were forgotten because no one can patent a root that grows in the countryside or charge a consultation fee for recommending ginger when you're nauseous. The clinical studies we've seen today didn't discover anything new. They confirmed what thousands of years of careful human observation had already documented in another way. That these plants work, that they always have, and that they've never stopped being there. Herbalists, tell me in the comments which of these 10 surprised you the most. Was it mint matching paracetamol for headaches? Elderberry cutting 4 days off the flu? Garlic showing activity against antibiotic-resistant bacteria? Or something you already used but didn't quite know why it worked? I read every single comment, without exception. And there's something I love about the comments on these videos. So many people share that their mother or grandmother used these exact plants. They saw it as children and never knew there was science behind it. If you have a story like that, write it down. It deserves to be told. If this video has made you see what you already have at home in a new light, give it a like. Help more people remember what should never have been forgotten. Until next time, herbalists,